Towson Bulldog got some meat and potatoes and a game every Sunday at 1 o'clock, or in the Ravens' case, next week on Thursday night. This guy and I have been exchanging phone calls and texts all summer long, and every time we get together, the state of the universe gets a little crazier for sane people like myself and David Steele who try to assess this as we go on. And all week long I've seen CK, and I thought they meant Louis CK because he's back in the news on the Me Too thing. But certainly the Nike Colin Kaepernick thing that struck on Labor Day weekend and now will lead into, I don't know, Supreme Court justices, Russian inquiries, the football season, the knee, Colin Kaepernick. It's high tide again for, we have an election coming out in 8 weeks. It's just, I have a feeling things are going to get even crazier here over the next 8 weeks. And guys like you and I are here to document it out on Twitter and talk about it. But it definitely, the stakes moved another level with Colin Kaepernick and Nike basically giving the league the middle finger this week.
That was, yeah, and it came out of nowhere. It caught everybody by surprise. This was maybe one of the best-kept secrets we've seen, not just within the context of what everyone's been fighting over the last 2 years. And it's really amazing to think that this has been going on for 2 entire years now, going back to August of 2016. But, yeah, here we are. And, yet that was all kept completely under wraps. You know, there's no question the NFL was blindsided by it. They've got a big commitment sunk into this. You know, they still believe in so many ways, we're talking about the league and the owners, that they've had the upper hand in all this, that they've got the public's backing, and that they're going to have the final word on this with the collusion case and with public sentiment and clearly the political backing of people whose name will not be mentioned here if we don't really have to. But, yeah, and then this Nike thing comes out of nowhere. So the NFL is going to have a lot to think about and a lot to consider about how far and how much harder they want to push this. But the thing is, they're in it so deep now, and they never really needed to ever get into it this deeply.
Don't they do this with everything? Didn't Deflategate devolve into this on their own terms? Like, once they go out into the water, they find Niagara Falls. It's, and maybe, and dude, and this is in all sincerity, I know we're talking about a bunch of, billionaires and millionaires, and, a lot of these guys are true jackasses in every sense of the word. I've been chronicling Angelos, you've been chronicling Snyder, and by the by, for every Sterling out there, and every racist, and every Jerry Richardson, going back to Denny's 40 years ago and whatnot. But all of this stuff, as it goes down, the NFL is such the gigantic whale, right? For television ratings, for culture, for black, for white, for right, for left, for hillbillies, for skybox owners, for everybody. It's America's thing. And when it comes back, it doesn't matter if you're a drug dealer, a gambler, a politician, a sports writer, a radio host. It is something that sort of ties the larger percentage of people together, even more so than politics. More people follow NFL fantasy sports truly than truly follow politics in this country. And it intersects because if you shoot at the NFL, if you shoot at Tom Brady or Ray Lewis or Peyton Manning or Jim Brown or any of those people with words to some degree, and the president is obviously caught on to this as well, that it creates this conversation. And all of the part of the NFL where CTE's involved, medical people are involved, the underbelly of society is involved in gambling, and now they're bringing that out to the front. The NFL can't hide, but they also don't navigate it well, right? Like literally, they don't have a sense of where the center and sort of right and wrong is because they're not really led by right or wrong like our country. They're led by the money. They're led by the money, right? By the money. Yeah, no, absolutely right. Yeah, that encapsulates it perfectly. For an entity that you would think would build everything that they're about on figuring these things out and handling them the right way and navigating this thing smartly and steering it in the right direction, they get it wrong every single time. This happens over and over again. And of course, when it happens, it gets the biggest spotlight possible. Like you mentioned with like Deflategate and Tom Brady. There's no way in the world
that should have gone in the direction that it did. And this has gone the exact same way.
I don't know how the league could stand by to vilify African-American players on their own terms and intimidate African-American players in a league that's, I don't know, you do the math on, who's a player of color versus Caucasians in the league. It's got to be 70-30, right? I mean, within a couple of percentage points. It's kind of crazy. And Nike is now saying, well, we don't really need the old white guys on their lawnmowers that are going with this dying administration that's going to go down in prison probably before it's all over with. That Nike has basically said, and I guess Phil Knight, I mean, this is really about Phil Knight and really about Kevin Plank, who, talked about the president's assets a couple of years ago and has been backing up from that. But then, dude, there's the Rebovich book, right, that comes out about Arthur Blank calling out, his guys in the room saying, are you guys out of your mind? And clearly, the McNairs and the Jerry Joneses, they don't think they're out of their mind any more than anybody who's on Fox News supporting this right now.
Yeah, right. And again, you got to think about the class. It's fun. You mentioned Jerry Richardson a little while ago. I mean, if it had not been for that report, he would still be the guy calling the shots in that market, on that franchise as one of the chosen ones. I mean, he had that big voice for the owners during the lockout, which almost turned into, games getting canceled. I mean, these are the guys who are incredibly powerful, and you look at the ways in which they're flexing them, and the ways in which they are absolutely certain that they are the ones with the fingers on the pulse of this country and of the fan base and of their audience and of their customers. It's pretty mind blowing, especially when you look at literally every other sport, but with the probable exception of baseball. To be honest, I mean, you mentioned Angelos, and you know what baseball owners are more or less like and what they've been like historically. But when you talk about
you're talking about things that aren't going to change. You and I'll do baseball later on once they figure out Duquette and Showalter and who they're going to run for the next press conference up here. But baseball's not even courting that issue, anymore, right? I mean,
no, they're not.
It's just, for Adam Jones to just come out and say it's a white man sport, no one to argue it, and no one even says anything about it.
They were just shrugged. They just said,
maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe you've been to the ballpark lately. And I don't know how they're going to solve that here locally, but certainly for the NFL, that's not part of where they are. And now to be blackballing players, right? Not players. Now it's gone plural. Yeah, I don't know what the long play here can be for the next 5 or 10 years as to how this is going to go well. And I'm not here to applaud Nike for having a political soul or a stance, but they're going to stand on the right side of history, or otherwise this is going to become a completely different country than the one I've been promised over the last 50 years,
Yeah, hey.
I hear you, bro. Hey, my people came from Venezuela too. Well, last week I heard we're invading there, right? So, nothing's off the table here, right? In any way, and certainly on the sporting landscape, dude. You've been covering this a long time. I've been covering this a long time. You wrote books on, this sort of prejudice and this sort of where sports and politics intersect, and Ali and 68, and, I turned 50 here in a couple of weeks, and I've been reading and feeling a lot of that. But the Curt Flood stuff to me, it really felt like, and the collusion stuff in the 80s for baseball really felt like a long time ago and something that could not happen again. And I guess that's what makes this era of politics and sports so incredibly mind-blowing to me, because I was ignorant enough to believe that it was going the other direction, that we would not have blackballed players. And by the way, the litigation around this Kaepernick thing is fascinating. That's its own island as to what's going to happen with trying to prove collusion in the sport, right?
Yeah, that's so funny because we've talked all this month already, have not even talked about the fact that the arbitrator did not dismiss the case as the NFL wanted them to for lack of evidence, which tells the entire world there's something there, that there is a smoking gun, that where there's smoke there is fire with this thing, that people can't sort of laugh this off or shrug this off and say oh, he's just tilting at windmills with this thing, and that somehow that would have validated everybody's myth about, oh, well, it's just what the commissioner said. Oh, it's all football decisions. That's why those guys aren't playing now. And now we know, and now we all have a sense that that's different because of what that arbitrator said. So yeah, this is all seemingly coming to a head, or at least is heading in that direction. And again, it's dragged out for 2 incredibly long years. You don't know exactly when it's going to end or what the NFL expects to gain in doing all this. But we all know the direction that this is turning in now. And it's a direction that the owners and the league cannot possibly have imagined it was going in, or at least it's something they probably should have imagined, but they just told themselves that it wasn't going to be that way because they kept conducting themselves in the exact same way every opportunity they had over and over and over again in what the Bob McNair said, and the Jerry Joneses said, and the Jerry Richardsons.
Well, I mean, Kaepernick wearing the pig socks, and Kaepernick's girlfriend, tweeting the Bishotti stuff. I mean, he hasn't been his own best friend either, throughout all of this, and I understand that, and I get where the message is coming from, and where all the other players have gone into this. I mean, they've all gone into this rabbit hole together, and I don't know how any of them are going to come out without some blood on them, all of them. And I don't know how this is going to work once this guy's not running the country anymore, for however that happens and whenever that happens, and what happens after that for the league and for the players and for Kaepernick in this lawsuit, and for anyone else. I am worried about how it all comes toppling down, and I really think that the NFL's got to be in the middle of it, right? And now that the NFL's back, you could only beat the drum so much in the 8 months of the offseason when nobody's watching and it's draft picks and you're on to the next country we're going to invade or dictator you're going to hang out with or Putin you're going to backslap and lie about when you get back and, running off the north. There's always so much of that. Now these guys are going to go out and I'm assuming somebody's going to take a knee. I'm assuming something's going to happen. I'm assuming words are going to be exchanged, at some point before Sunday afternoon, because that's just the way this soap opera works, right? We wanted reality TV. We got it, right?
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. That time is coming. This is what we've been talking about this entire offseason. It's like, if you guys don't find a way to resolve this, sit down and try to find out where things went wrong and how to get it right and how to no longer have players accusing you of blackballing you and all these other things, we're going to get to this point that everyone anticipates every year, the big opener and the big opening weekend with all the pomp and circumstance and anticipation and watch parties and all these things. And everyone's going to be watching, what are they all going to do during the national anthem? Who's on the field? Who's not on the field? What are they doing? What are they going to say? Whose fists are being raised? Is that instead of talking about football? And if the NFL wanted them to just talk about football, this is a poor way of doing that. This is the exact opposite of the results you wanted. And why didn't you figure out a way to avoid this a long time ago? Who knows? But the fact is they didn't figure it out. They did not. They're on opposite sides. You look at all the other sports. There's this natural conflict between management and players, but it's nothing like this. This puts all the others just absolutely to shame.
Well, and I think there's also going to come a point where, we're going to have Players Association bargaining, negotiations, sitting down to talk contracts and where the money is and who's in charge of the money. And obviously, Nike has now taken a stand that they're not going to go back into their hole, right? I mean, they're out for saying their political stance is out in front now, and it's led by all of their athletes as well. David Steele is here. He is, of course, longtime columnist around the country at the Baltimore Sun, now at the Sporting News, the co-author of Silent Gesture with Tommy Smith, something you definitely want to check out. You can follow David out on Twitter at David_C_Steele. The E is the silent E, but David Steele is never silent about this stuff. All of our WNST WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Fremont Mortgage. We're going to be getting out and doing some Raven shows here. We're going to be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry along with Carl Delmont and our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need Freedmont's education online. Buying, selling, thinking about it. Go to Freedmont.com and learn more. Also brought to you by our friends at Michael's Cafe. The crab cakes, the split-level soup, the bands, the live music on Friday nights in that beautiful outdoor patio lounge while the weather allows it. Get out there and enjoy nice September, nice fall night. And they're coming to White Marsh soon as well. Michael's Cafe, now at York and Timonium, where they've been for 34 years and about to expand over to the east side as well. Sporticulture's brought in these beautiful Maryland arrangements here, as well as my Bills and my Ravens flowers. You can get them at sporticulture.com. That's Sporticulture. That is a local company delivering these flowers anywhere you want to send them for the team of your choice, the fan of your choice, in town, out of town, wherever it is. Mike Resigliano is getting the Buffalo Bills floral arrangement here next week. He doesn't know it yet, but if you see him, let him know. David Steele is here from Sporting News. We're talking about all sorts of weird stuff as the season begins. And look, I'll get to Flacco in a minute. I'll get to the Ravens in a minute, but the last thing I want to say on this is in regard to what you do for a living and I do for a living and truth coming out and truth being reported and, Woodward this week and all the things that happen in journalism. This is usually the week that the NFL gets attacked on a lot of fronts, right? Like, there'll be a CTE story later in the week that's a powerhouse, right? If there is an angry girlfriend that we're going to go Me Too, this is the week that drops, right? If there's pictures of gas mask bongs, like, get ready for that roller coaster ride because literally, right, if Super Bowl week and the Super Bowl night has become a little bit of a circus, this is the week the circus comes to town for loss, all of that stuff. So buckle up, right? That there will be headlines this week that will shutter the NFL for an hour or two on Twitter.
Yeah, no, that's the nature of where the NFL stands now. And I think everybody gets it pretty much instinctively that they just, they're Godzilla. There's nothing else that could happen in any other sport that would just overwhelm everybody the way that the NFL has, and the way they've become. And that's what's so interesting about this, because that means that everything they do and say and everything that goes on around them goes under a microscope, and it certainly has a much bigger audience for everybody and a much bigger reason for discussion than than the things that would happen in any other sport. So it again, if we sort of take this whole thing full circle, it brings back the question of how a league that has built itself to this point, including just the whole, primetime opener that's separate from everything else with the world champs and the big concert and raising the banner and all this big celebration and everything, how they continue to just sort of mismanage things that could have been managed so much more easily, so much with so much more common sense, and in such a way that they wouldn't, in a sense, sabotage their own story.
That would be fascinating for Goodell 15, 20 years from now, who's a very bright guy, that when all of this is said and done and he writes his memoirs about this, because I get a vibe, and look, I'm not an apologist for Goodell at all, but I get a vibe that if he were God in the NFL, this would have been managed a little differently. I have a feeling there's a very, very loud right contingent in there. He is not a part of that and understands that it's probably not good, as far as the players go and the people who play the game, that they've taken the stance that they've taken. Not that he would necessarily take the Nike side, but I think he is among the more rational men in that room and understands that this has been mismanaged. And even though he has been a part of it, I would say that if you gave him the saliva test and said, tell me the truth, he has to have seen how mismanaged all of this is, and blackballing a football player is not a good thing long term for the National Football League.
Right. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. We always have to include that caveat whenever we talk about this sport, all the other sports, and their commissioners. They're employees of the owners, and these are the owners that are driving all this. They drive all the rules about disciplining players. They drive the rules about the collective bargaining when there ends up being a lockout or a strike or some sort of, crazy thing going on between them and the union. It's governing everything that's going on about this, about everything about the rules, head trauma, the helmet rule, all this stuff. These are all owners that are doing this. And Roger Goodell has to navigate this, and I don't want to necessarily say that he's listening to the wrong people or taking the wrong counsel on all of this, but you remember when he came in, he was going to be the voice of reason when he took over from Paul Tagliabue, and remember some of the things that went on under his watch. He was going to be the guy that was going to, straighten everything else out and bring common sense to it, and it sort of ended up going in the other direction. And as much as he is to blame, the fact that the owners still run the show, whether anyone wants to recognize that or not, that still plays into all of this way, way more than anything else. The reason those guys are not playing right now and they're on the outside looking in and filing grievances and accusing people of collusion, that's the owners. That's not Roger Goodell.
He is David_C_Steele out on Twitter and, of course, out at the Sporting News. And, by the way, once all the politics clear and stuff and we kneel or stand or do whatever we do and there's flyovers or there's not or whatever, they're going to play football all of a sudden. And certainly in these here parts, and I know sometimes you're confused with being a Washingtonian, certainly not a lot of hope down there. But up here, I smell purple optimism, and I smell it in some sort of rational way, and I think there's a lot of reasons to think that the Ravens are going to be pretty good this year. Now, they got to go out and do it against the Bills. They got to do it on short rest. They got against the Bengals next week. They've got 3 road games in division really to start the season before they even get into it in October. So we're going to learn a lot about their fate here early on, but so far so good. I like the Ravens right now. I am clearing my plans. I'm not going to the Australian Open this year in January, David. I'm going to stick around for the Ravens Invitational, hopefully in January in Pittsburgh or New England or Nashville or wherever it's going to be.
Yeah, I think you have a good reason to. I think everybody has a good reason to, because you take preseason and training camp and OTAs and all these other things with a grain of salt, but in a lot of ways these guys have done everything they need to do to make this team better. And we talked, a year ago, or at least, last December and January. It's like, this is a critical off season. They have to fix these things. They cannot go through the same things they've been going through the last 3 or 4 years, where they've got these major flaws and they're overcoming them every week, and they get down to the wire in week 17 and something goes wrong and they miss the playoffs. And they had to fix those things. And they had to get very lucky in a lot of cases, too. And I think their biggest piece of luck is, as you've been talking about many times, as you've reminded me plenty of times, and I think I've appreciated that, Joe Flacco's back to being Joe Flacco. He looks great. He looks fantastic. He looks healthy. He looks obviously motivated. He looks sharp. He looks like he's on time. He's in charge. And that alone really could be the difference between what they've gone through these last couple of years and what they might do this year, because he looks like the quarterback that they paid for, that they committed to, that they didn't necessarily put bodies around to help, but the guy that they built everything around to win games for them, and they should be better just based on that.
What do you think Lamar Jackson's real role on this team this year? What impact? I mean, I was kidding around with Dennis Kolatzis from Coots Ford earlier this week about it. He said, I think he's going to touch the ball 14 times because I think the Ravens are going to be up 3 touchdowns and they're going to let him go in there and run around with 8 minutes left to go. And I said, okay, I mean, I'll buy that. But, other than that, is it 4 to 6 plays a game where he touches the ball 2 to 4 times and they toss it around? And at what point on the field, at what point in a down and distance, at what point in a game do you take your $25 million quarterback off for what Joe Flacco once called a high school offense?
Yeah, well, they haven't been afraid to get on Joe's nerves before, that. But in the end, I think that they're trying to do things in the best interest of everybody. So I think that, I think he's gonna be active every week, and that's so funny because right at the very beginning in rookie camp, there was a talk of, wow, they're probably going to have 3 quarterbacks this active every week, and that looks like that's what's going to be the case, because they're going to want to get him on the field either in, maybe some goal line situations, some third down situations, some short yardage stuff, just some things to sort of stir it up. I mean, I don't want to make the instant comparison to the way that Michael Vick was used his rookie year by Dan Reeves, if I'm not mistaken, but that was that there'll be an element of that in there. I don't think they went through everything they did in this offseason with the way they were using him around to just sort of, decoy the entire league for 17 weeks. I mean, he's going to play a role. They're going to take advantage of what he's capable of doing. They're going to see if he's somebody who could scare defenses just by being out there, from moving around and from either lining up behind center or in the shotgun or out wide and having Joe Flacco in different kind of weird places all the time. As long as they don't put them in position to get either of them hurt, I think we're going to see, them out on the field. I don't know how many times that means Lamar touches the ball, but just the idea that he can and that he will is going to be a big part of what this team does.
Well, I've used that third roster spot. I've said, think of it like a wide receiver or a special team returner or something like that, because you are going to use him in a specialty role that probably will not be quarterback for, sets of downs with Joe Flacco, unless there's an injury, or unless something happens that's outside of the realm of what we imagine happening at this point. That being said, it isn't a third quarterback traditionally where two guys sit there and hold the clipboard and, and have a water bottle. I mean, that's not what this is going to be. It's certainly not for RG3 either. You imagine if they put a package with both of those guys out on the field, how weird that could get, right? Like if you know what I mean? Like literally put all three of the quarterbacks out there at the same time. In a 3rd and 4 against a good team, against the Steelers who aren't looking for it. Weird things could happen there. Yeah. And I think Marty's got enough, mad scientist in him to do it, right?
He's got the free reign to come up with it and to throw it out there. He's not going to get, physically removed from the sideline if he tries to pull something like that. I think John Harbaugh's comfortable with it. I think he has been the entire offseason. And, I think that they don't go out and get a guy like RG3 when there are a lot of quarterbacks they could have gone and looked for, or they could have sat around and waited to have come available at the end of training camp, unless they felt that they could use him in a lot of different ways. And we saw the things that RG3 is still capable of doing. Obviously not to the extent that he was in his rookie year before he got hurt, but he still has elements of that. And it's going to be enough where if he is out there, if they do put him out there in those situations, teams are going to okay, who do we lay off? Who do we forget about? How crazy is this? It's going to give people something to think about at a time when they don't want to be thinking about something. They just want to be reacting or being, just pin your ears back aggressive about stuff. So, and the other thing that they used to say about this is what have they got to lose? I mean, obviously you don't want to get Joe hurt, but when it comes to what this team does offensively and what we have seen this team do offensively over the years when they were changing coordinators every 5 minutes and stuff, and, people were clashing and quarterback coaches and all this other stuff, why not try something in these kind of options and give this offense a real jump start and make it a threat, and don't let the defense have to be the ones under pressure every single week, every single year, in order to get this team into the playoffs, in order to get them a win. I mean, I think this could be a benefit as long as nobody gets hurt.
David Steele is here from Sporting News. You can find him out on Twitter as well as at Sporting News as the football season begins. Also going to be doing a Monday column each and every week at Sporting News in the aftermath of Sunday football. Last thing for you, we don't get together too often. I want to give you 2 minutes at least to talk about the Orioles, because you've chronicled this as long as I've chronicled this. It's such a mess, and for the offseason, and I think it puts even more, stress on the Terps and the Orioles, or things that people talk about around here. But to know that the Orioles are sort of bye-bye and nighty-night for the next 2 or 3 years with no real chance, and so far, no real clear strategy, no clear leadership, no clear ownership, and they sort of work in darkness in the offseason, and they prefer to do that. I don't know that that's going to happen in October, November, because something gives here with Duquette and Showalter in a couple of weeks, and obviously coming off 100 losses, however many it's going to be, whatever embarrassment it's going to be. But this is, pitching this to the fans as we're gonna rise again. I don't know, based on what.
I don't know either. The thing that is going to stick in everybody's minds is that we thought these days were over. That little surge for those years that came at the end of that horrible, horrible drought. We thought that all that stuff from before, we thought we were done with that. We thought we were done with the, not showing up and just.
Peter's letting the baseball people run the baseball. Peter was always, it's like this clown on Pennsylvania, always one text away from the red button and signing Chris Davis or doing something stupid or recommending something stupid or being involved in something he has no business in being involved in, and I have no idea what the kids are doing. I mean, people ask me every day, what are these kids going to do? And I'm like, they've been here 30 years. I've been here 30 years. I don't know them. I've never met them. I don't know many people who know them. And the people who know them don't talk to me glowingly about how much they know about baseball, quite frankly, or how they have this incredible skill set at 55 to come in and fix it. And that's the real concern here, is that we become a one-sport town again in a year where all of our hopes and thoughts are on Terrell Suggs' Achilles and Joe Flacco's left knee,
Right. Yeah, and it's appalling because, when I got down, and everything I'd known before I came down from growing up, it was right down the road and going to Maryland and all sort of stuff. It was always going to be an Orioles town. And there was this long stretch where that little by little was wearing away, and as soon as they got good again, it all came back. It was like muscle memory. It was like an instinctive thing. They had the city back in the palm of their hands. And they just let it go again. And you're right. That what are the signs? I don't see the signs that people can grasp onto that would give them the faith that they should trust what's going to happen, who's going to make the decisions, how they're going to make the decisions, what those decisions are going to be, who they trust, who they believe, how they decide these things. What reason is there to believe?
I have a feeling Brady Anderson's still going to be working intimately inside the organization in December, January, and February. And as long as that's going on and he's not given the title and putting a tie on and coming out and professionally meeting people like me and you and the fan base and the sponsors and literally, work is a verb, dude. Somebody needs to show up and do it and be nice to people and recruit the community. They don't know anything about how to do anything other than fight with people, really. That's been my experience over 25 years, and the reputation's so horrific, especially around the business community here, that I don't know how that they think somebody in a tie is going to repair that. There's so much more that's going to have to go into this other than we're going to pick Bobby Witt Jr. next June, and in 2024, when he finally turns 22 or whatever it'll be, he'll be a Major League Baseball player. I've been around this too long. I just don't know where it's coming from if it's not coming from you and me, the people that already are vested in to the soap opera and want to believe, because they have a hard time finding people to become baseball fans at this point, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the worst thing about it. It was just a natural thing for decade upon decade upon decade. Just, parents passing it down to their kids, and they're going to reach a point, and they probably stalled it for a few years by having that little bit of a run. But if that run had continued right through those years, instead of them becoming a contender and coming in close to a World Series, that we might be at that point right now where this a franchise that was forgotten, and they would be at rock bottom trying to reteach everybody how to love baseball in this town and how to love the Orioles again, and how to reattach with the history of this franchise. That may be the only thing that's saving them. There's people who, just a few years ago were packing the building and watching playoff games.
They need to make people like you and me advocates. The people who are pissed off, The business people, the hundreds of business people I know who are pissed off in whatever way you could be pissed off for any variety of things. This is a very, very easy time to take it out on them by doing the opposite of love. Yeah. It's not hate. It's indifference, right? I mean, literally, that's what this is. This is indifference, and this is them the first time around saying, well, screw you, we'll choke you on your cable bill. We'll get $35 from every person with a cable box in 6 states. You know, that's not going to be the plan in 2022, I fear, for them.
No, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. By that time, it could be gone forever, and everything is going to be purple here, and no, it's not going to. Yeah, and just the entire memory that this was that this town that this was a town that once loved that franchise, and that it was orange over purple and orange over every other color, you know, forever and ever. You know, those days are going to be just a very, very distant memory by that time. So, you know, the windows, you know, if it's not closed already, it's slamming shut really, really fast. And you know, again, if they make these, you know, huge, you know, upheaval kind of changes, what reason is there to have faith in the people making decisions? And so that, in such that the fans would then say, okay, we're back on the right track. You guys got it figured out now. You put all that other stuff aside. Everything is cool now. Why believe them if they tell you that right now? Whoever they bring in. I mean, they struck gold with Buck for a few years, and who's out there that they could bring in that they would, one, have that same sort of effect, and two, you know, you would trust them instinctively to say, well, they made the right decision because it's them, because we believe in them, because we think that they know what they're doing. Nobody believes that now.
David Steele, speaking the truth, out at Sporting News as well as on Twitter, David_C_Steele with the silent E, but he is never silent. We'll be chronicling the National Football League each and every week on the Monday column. I'll be following along on your Monday column out at Sporting News. Always good to catch up with you, and at some point, sanity will come back. I don't know. I hope you and I are having a beer at the end of a pier with our feet off, enjoying it once that happens. But until then, you know, keep the faith, David Steele. That's all I can say, my man.
Yeah, you do the same. And thanks for having me on, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that the agony will end sometime soon.
Well, if the Orioles, turn around or the Ravens make the playoffs, it'll fix everything in my the opiate of the masses, I guess. That's why we're here. Just stick to sports. That's what we'll try to do. David, be well, man. Take care of yourself, all right?
You too.
David Steele, my man, joining us from Sporting News. He's out on the interweb, as am I. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. And, of course, in the Toyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. And, of course, the Maryland Jockey Club, the Laurel entries on the front of WNST.net. On the front of WNST.net's digital morning newspaper that comes to your email inbox. And, of course, we'll be heading down there for the Maryland Million next month. That's October the 20th. That's the first Saturday of the 51st year of my life. I'm feeling old, man. I turn 50 next month, so let me have at it. You know, I mean, it's all winding down. The silver's coming into the beard here on the Facebook Live as well. The Maryland Jockey Club will be celebrating that with me. I got a lot of celebrating to do, man. I got the Steely Dan at the Modell Lyric on October 11th. You can learn more about them and our great partnership. There's magic at the Modell Lyric at modell-lyric.com. Also, John Cusack and the screening of Say Anything coming up next week down at the Modell Lyric. And last but never least, if there's any breaking news that happens, you get that first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Colatzos will be here to get you home on Thursday, get you ready for the weekend, as well as next week. He'll be the pregame show. From 3 until 5, it is the SSV on WNST. Heard from on Thursdays from 3 until 5, yes. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am a very available individual. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.